Welcome back, everybody. Our next guest is one of the most cogent voices in Congress about national security, about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and he has been warning about an impending crisis coming over the horizon to our global food supply. Joining us right now from the great state of Georgia is Congressman Austin Scott. Congressman, great to have you on the show.
Hey, John, great to have you. Thanks for having us back.
Oh, it's a great honor to have you on. I want to get to all those issues we just mentioned, but I want to start with something that we broke on the site this morning. A lot of people haven't been paying attention to this, but there is a federal trial underway in your state, in Georgia, where Stacey Abrams is trying to eviscerate the citizenship checks that voters must go through in order to vote in Georgia and some of the ID requirements that they need to do. Your reaction to the idea that someone would contest citizenship as a...
Well, hey, it's absolutely part of her agenda. And if you look at what's happening, John, they're taking illegal immigrants and they're shipping them around the country, and they're actually registering them to vote, and they're allowing them to vote in municipal elections around the country. So, I mean, this is something that I think the vast majority of Americans, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, is opposed to. I mean, how can you let people that are not even United States citizens, that don't constitutionally have the right to vote inside the United States of America? And so just how far left can the left go? I mean, I'm baffled at this, that they think it's okay for people that are citizens of, say, China or Russia to vote in U.S. elections.
Yeah, remarkable moment.
Congressman. It's unbelievable. And I know that the special Senate elections would cause people to think that Georgia is a blue state, but I still believe that Georgia is a very red state. But the way that Democrats are operating within Georgia, you're right. There should not be any question as far as citizens voting. But here in California, we have motor voter laws, so you can essentially vote if you have a state ID or license. Of course, New York City, the hullabaloo over non-citizens voting there. And it seems that folks like Stacey Abrams think that this flies with the voters of Georgia. Does that echo how Georgia voters feel?
Oh, I don't think so. And I think Georgia voters look at the last election and they realize that historically, Georgia has had about 4 million voters. You can go all the way back to the Romney election, the last governor's race, up to and until the last presidential election. Georgia historically had about 4 million voters. This last election, we had 5 million voters. And so we had a 20%, 25% uptick in the total number of votes cast in this past election. And so one of the things that came about from that is that you look at Barack Obama, who got 85,000 absentee ballots. Hillary Clinton got about 100,000. Stacey Abrams got 135,000. And Joe Biden gets 850,000 absentee ballots. And so I think that anybody who would look at those numbers would reasonably agree that we need to know who's voting in these elections. And you don't know when it's by absentee in mail. So Georgia's got a lot of early voting, tremendous number of opportunities to vote, easy to register in the state of Georgia, and we want to make it hard to cheat in the state of Georgia. And I think that's exactly what the last law did. And if they didn't cheat, they shouldn't be worried about the next election.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a lot of discussion going on right now about that. Congressman, you just came back from the Pacific, and I know you were in India, I believe Australia. We are all focused on the Russia-Ukraine threat for all the right reasons, because that's a very big moment in world history. But do we have our eye out in the ball with China? What should we be watching for, and what are our allies in the region most worried about?
Yes, so Australia is very much on the ball with this, and they very much understand the risk that China poses. They have fought with us in every war since, I believe, World War I, and very much aligned with our thoughts, our interests, our values, and concerns with regard to China being prepared to move sooner rather than later. I would remind you that China is has breached territorial lines in India. They are fishing in the exclusive economic zones of other countries. So China is against across the lines in multiple areas, just as the Russians have been. Our message to India was pretty candid in that if you watch the Russian weapon systems inside Ukraine, it's very clear that you cannot win against China with Russia's weapon systems. And so the hope is to get a country like India to update their systems with with U.S.-based weapons so that they would be better prepared to defend themselves against China. And again, the goal is to not go to war with China. The goal is to make sure that China understands the consequences for their aggression and their actions, and to stop that by making sure that Australia, India, other countries that would fight with the United States in a Chinese conflict are prepared to do so.
Yeah, we absolutely have to support those folks. And it's astounding to me how few conversations President Biden has had with respect to China, and not really any strong policy either. But yesterday on the show, we had Doug Collins on, and he talked about the money that President Trump, with his massive war chest, the money that President Trump has thrown behind conservative candidates in Georgia with his endorsements, but just, throwing the money behind those candidates. But Doug Collins said that he felt like it wasn't enough money. I believe he said that there needed to be a few more zeros behind the number. Do you feel like, as far as getting rid of incumbents like Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger, is money what's needed? Is it more ground game? Is it more human resources? Human capital, I guess I should say. What is needed?
Yeah, so I support Brian Kemp, and I'm very much opposed to Brad Raffensperger. I think Raffensperger's actions during the election, the absentee ballots, the consent decree that was signed with the Democratic Party, those are the reasons that I'm opposed to Brad Raffensperger being reelected. I actually think Brian Kemp has been a very good governor, and I've endorsed Brian Kemp and intend to maintain that endorsement of him. Respect President Trump, love President Trump, but I maintain that I have a good governor in Brian Kemp. I wish David Perdue were in the U.S. Senate right now. He's not. He was part of a great Georgia delegation. Did a great job with national security issues. But I've got a good governor in Brian Kemp, and so I've endorsed him. And we'll see what happens when the ballots are counted in May. We won't know until the ballots are counted.
Yeah, that's what elections are for. I want to take you to an issue, sir, that I know you've been leading on, and it's hard to fight through all the different other things that are on the radar right now, but we are hurtling towards a major food supply crisis later this year, early into next year. You have been the leading voice on this in Congress. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned recently about fertilizer shipments to the United States and how it could make the situation even more concerning.
Yeah, so one thing I want to make clear, I'm talking about a global food shortage. I still think in the United States, we're going to walk in the grocery store, we're going to pay more for our groceries. A lot of that is because of what Joe Biden did on fuel costs and raising them and those input prices. But when we talk about global food shortages, I'm concerned about the lower income countries not having anything to eat, those who are fed through the UN World Food Program. With regard to fertilizer, one of the new concerns we have inside the United States is that some of the rail companies have told the fertilizer distribution companies that they've got to reduce their shipments by about 20%. And so Union Pacific is one of the railroads that has said this. There's a lot of fertilizer that transits through the rail system. And if that fertilizer doesn't get there, then you're talking about lower production inside the United States, which means we will actually have less to export as well. And so you put that on top of Ukraine not being able to put 50 million metric tons of corn and wheat into the export markets. And it's just every little bit makes it that much worse. And so I think that Congress needs to have some of these rail lines in and ask them why they're cutting the transportation of these inputs for our grocery supply.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to see. And we obviously don't expect to see completely bare shelves, but here in California, our agriculture industry has suffered greatly. And that is a little bit unique to California, but across the country with that 20% hit in fertilizer, I certainly hope that that's not a direct proportion to how much we will be suffering payment-wise when it comes to the grocery store. But Congressman Austin Scott, we appreciate you so much, and we will have you back on soon.